everyone, welcome to another episode of the Hector of Mike Experience. Common sense in an uncommon world. And this week has been, and the last couple of weeks has been very uncommon for everything we're dealing with. It's just like it's a roller coaster. You got the president today, who's out there talking about the Civil Rights Act and civil rights movements, wanting to pass his Voting Rights Act. You've got Fauci, who's out there saying, everyone's going to get Omicron, so don't worry about it. You got the director of the Center for Disease Control, and we've known this for a while, and we've talked about this on the show. You said, well, even if you get the vaccine, it's not going to help you not give it to other people or you get it yourself. It's just gonna protect you if you end up getting it. And so, I don't know, just the world's upside down. You've got Democrats now pushing back on Biden, and at the same time, his poll numbers just continue to tank further and further down. Mike, what's your take on this whole thing?
What a great way to start the year. That's what my take is. Let's keep this going for another 11 months. Oh, man. It really is in many ways, take it to a higher level of just not the politics of it, but the communications of it, which is what we do. And it's just amazing at how bad it has been. I mean, you start off, like you said, the speech that he gave on Wednesday in Atlanta at the AME Church, where he had some people there, but not many. He certainly didn't have the key Democrats like Stacey Abrams there, who's been someone that has just been at the forefront within the liberal part of the Democrat Party on all of this. And he comes out and he basically says, look, if you believe in voter ID, you're a racist. If you believe that people should have to have identification when they submit their absentee ballot, you're the same as, the thugs from back in the 60s that, used to beat up black people who were trying to get the right to vote. The incendiary nature of his comments and his communication were really so un-Joe Biden-like that it was stunning. And it was so unpresidential, it was pathetic. He's the guy that was supposed to bring the country together. I mean, it's been less than a year. He was the guy that was supposed to come in and bring the country together. And basically he said, look, if you don't agree with what I want to do on voting rights or voting reforms, which a lot of people do not agree with him on, 85% of the American people believe there should be voter ID when you go vote, because you have to have ID for everything else that you have in your life. It's not that big of a deal. But to him, the way he phrased it and the way he brought it out, if you're against that, if you're for voter ID, you're a racist. You're against black people. You're the same kind of people that, tried to remove people from the bus, same kind of person that tried to remove the people that sat at the lunch counter at Woolworths, the same kind of people that, took to violence when blacks were protesting for their civil rights. That's insane. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I don't know, who's inside there, but whoever wrote that for him did him a huge disservice in trying to bring the country together.
Well, Mike, what we got Uncle Joe became Crazy Joe. And so Crazy Joe's here now.
It really is pathetic. Whoever wrote that, and I would bet you, his co-partner there, Kamala, probably had a lot to do with that. But to make it that stark is just, it divides the country. I mean, and it does it in the most guttural way. It's interesting to see black leaders, stand up against what he said, because it was so racially tinged and so inflammatory. But that's just the start. Okay, so he's down there doing that. Meanwhile, as they say in the news, up in Washington, D.C., there's Fauci on a couchie who's sitting in front of the Senate panel. And along the way, he gets into a pissing match with Rand Paul. If you ever said to your doctor, I want a second opinion, opinion one is Fauci, opinion two is Rand Paul. So then you go to a witch doctor because they probably know more than the two of them combined. But that aside, he gets into a pissing match with Rand Paul. That's not a big deal. There's a political thing back and forth with those guys. And then he calls some other senator a moron. Again, you could take with that. It's politics. But then his communication is, hey, it doesn't matter what we do. We're all going to get Omicron. And it's like, what are you talking about? I mean, people are going out to get their vaccine shot because they're being told that it will help prevent them from getting Omicron. People wear masks. People are social distancing. People are doing all of these things because you're supposed to be able to avoid getting that. And now he just simply says, you're going to get it anyway. And it's like, okay, who's in charge? And then today, the president comes out and says, we're ordering another 500,000 doses of at-home testing, COVID testing. Well, they haven't delivered on the first 500,000 that he promised in December. So now he's promising another 500,000. I mean, we're going to have COVID 88 by the time those things come. It just is one thing after another that are communication failures that really just leave people, as you said, why the polling numbers for him are so bad. Yeah, including Hispanics. And you should talk about that because those numbers I saw, I did a double take.
No, Hispanics, and we'll get to that right now. But I know that there was even a letter written by the niece of Martin Luther King, because as we're approaching the Martin Luther King Day this Monday, she ended up penning a op-ed along with Ken Blackwell, who was Secretary of State over in Ohio some years back, and they penned a letter basically saying, look, the language that you're using here, the fact that you would go out there and say that blacks or Hispanics or minorities are too dumb or ignorant to go out and get driver's licenses, I mean, it's insulting. I mean, when you go to Los Angeles and I've got to go to a restaurant to pick up my burger, I've got to show them my vaccination card and an identification. I mean, so I can get it.
So I can cholesterol count before I can get a burger. You're better off than I am.
Yeah,
but you're right.
Right now. No, but I've got to show ID to go pick up a burger, and yet all of a sudden you're a racist if you believe that you should probably show ID in order to go vote.
Right.
I mean, people in Mexico, they have voter identification. Mm-hmm. That's in Mexico. And a lot of other places. The
only place in Europe that does not have voter ID is in London if it's a municipal election. And by the way, maybe we should talk a little bit about the fact that 800,000 people in New York City who want American citizens just got the right to vote. That also happened this week. So, but voter ID across the world is the commonality. But even if you disagree, and this is the part that kind of gets me, is even if you disagree, because I'm trying to get to the point where we can have a common sense discussion based on facts and data, even if you disagree with the premise of it, to couch it in the phrase of if you believe in voter ID, you're a racist. You're the Bull Connors who were on I think it was the Pettus Bridge, where they hit, what's his name, Congressman Lewis and Dr. King and everything that happened there. They equate you to those people because you have a policy difference. That's completely out. I mean, even Donald Trump did do that, for Pete's sake. That kind of intolerance is not what we expected from the Biden-Harris administration. We expected a whole lot different, I think, when you look at people that voted, whether they voted for him or against him. They expected a more moderate tone, a more civil tone than what he did.
Well, did he even mention that Bull Connor was a Democrat?
Oh, no, probably. I didn't know that. I did not know that. And he voted in 2020, by the way.
There you go. No, yes, the Hispanic numbers are in the tank right now for Biden. I mean, they're in the mid 30s, and a lot of it has to do with the inflation problems that we're having. We've got the highest inflation in the last 40 years. Gas prices over the last just in 2021, gas prices rose approximately 50%. You got food prices that increased. You got used cars increased by, I believe it was like 37% in price.
Right.
And so the numbers have come out this past week, and it's looking ugly. Here in California, we're at a 3-month high of unemployment. We've got more people filing for unemployment here in California, and so you've got the president that is focused that is talking about voter identification. You've got gas prices that are back on their way up again. You've got millions of people who are unemployed, and yet he wants to call people racist for not believing that people should have voter ID to go out and vote. And it's just like, it's the wrong priorities. It's the wrong focus, especially at this time, especially when you've got article after article is about hospitals being inundated with individuals. You've got a lot of people now you've got, if you want to have surgery or alternative surgery, you want to have a lung transplant, you've got to wait because there's so many people, going into the hospitals. And it's like, focus on the job at hand, focus on what's important. And right now, what's important is making people feel safe, making people feel as though someone's in charge, and dealing with Omicron, and getting people back to work, or helping our small business community, who's once again being devastated by this virus.
You're absolutely right. That one of the things that's happening is that what people care about and what they're concerned about and what the administration is talking about are two completely different things. And the ironic part is, and let's talk about this for a second, because this is the behind the scenes stuff that most people don't see. The behind the scenes stuff is that they expected to have Build Back Better passed, and it failed. And so they have a gap. And what they figured they would do is fill the gap with messaging on this voter stuff, figuring that that would keep the left happy. And what happened was, not only did they incinerate any kind of bipartisanship, the left also turned their back on them. I mean, you did not have the traditional liberal Democrats who have talked about all this voting stuff there in Atlanta with him. And so he didn't even get the left, while he further polarized the right and basically told people in the middle, if you believe in voter ID, you're a racist. So this was like lose, 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 straight across the political spectrum. And it'll be interesting to see what they come up with next, because they were trying to fill this gap. And, again, you could have a policy discussion about it, but to say to someone, because you disagree with me, you're a racist, and I'm associating you with the people that, killed and persecuted and intimidated people in the 1960s, who were trying to get the right to vote. It's outrageous, and people are calling him, people like Martin Luther King Jr.'s niece, Dr. Alveda King, are calling him out on it, and they should, because it's not what this country should be about. And in the meantime, people are going to the gas station. It's $4.75 now out here, cheaper obviously around the country. You go to the market. I don't know if you've been in the market lately, but the instant soups that they have, I don't know what happened to those things, but they're gone. You look at the sodas or soft drinks that you want to buy, they're now limited because the companies don't have the aluminum to be able to do that. Toilet paper is getting on the shortage again because they're having problems in the forest industry in getting the wood pulp and getting it processed and getting it to market. So all of those things are still happening. The one that I thought was interesting is, and I read about this because I have no life anymore. Chicken tenders, is now becoming a hot commodity because I guess it takes more time to process the chicken for chicken tenders, and they don't have the people to do it and then get it to market on a timely basis. What happened in a year? I mean, a year ago, the NFL playoffs were getting ready to happen, and there were chicken tenders out the wazoo. Wendy's had chicken tenders, for Pete's sake. Now you can't go to the market and buy chicken tenders. It's just a complete collapse, and it's pretty amazing that they stand there and they say everything is fine, because again, you can always argue numbers, but the key in this business is how people feel. And you have to address that. You can have all the numbers in the world that are right, and in this case they don't. But even if they did, it wouldn't matter because people are concerned. People are worried. People are scared. And, they're doing really nothing to alleviate that by being the Keystone Cops.
I think the easiest thing they've got to do, or the quickest thing they've got to do, is they've got to get this playbook, throw it out the window, and say, okay, um, let's just look at the polling, let's look at the headlines, and let's just deal with that, and come up with some sort of solutions. Now, granted, I understand that the healthcare crisis isn't an easy thing to deal with, but I mean, this is what they promised. They said that they were going to deal with this virus. They were going to, jobs were going to be opened back up, or businesses were going to be opened back up, and they were going to deal with this and put an end to it. Well, there is no end in sight right now. It looks like it's actually gotten worse. And what's actually gotten worse, and there's so much other things they can message on the infrastructure bill. They can message on schools and what's happening there, making sure that our schools have the proper tests, make sure that they have the masks for kids. They can message on the cost of healthcare, making it easier for people to bring out the military. You got the National Guards, get a roundtable with all the governors and say, hey, we need all the National Guard to come out, along with, we're going to make military available so we can open up stadiums, or we can open up places for people to get, checked, just make sure they don't have the virus, or if they're feeling like chest pains or whatever it may be, they're going to get treated. There's so many different options that he can do so that he can look presidential, so that he can look like he's doing something. But at the end of the day, he's looking like he's
Old
he
Joe.
just old Joe. Like he's not even focused on what people are caring about. And at the end of the day, look, it's a shame for these reasons. It's a shame for those that are struggling, for those that are dealing with the pandemic, for the society that has gotten frustrated and tired of feeling like they once again have to isolate again. It is frustrating for the small business owner that is, once again looking at, okay, I'm going to have to close up again. For the small business owners looking at their employees who are, 20, 30, 40% calling sick because they've got COVID, or because they're feeling they've got a cold, or they've got some symptoms. And so, and that part, it's all frustrating. It's frustrating for kids, thinking that they're going to have to go back to distance learning.
But here's what I don't understand, and maybe you, because I'm the emotional Italian and you're the smart guy, maybe you can explain this to me. So today, the Supreme Court issued basically two rulings. It said, number one, the Biden-Harris vaccination mandate for businesses over 100 people is unconstitutional. They can't use the FDA, I guess it was. They can't use that federal agency to impose health requirements. Mm-hmm. So that's one. But on the other hand, it said that any medical facility that gets Medicare or Medicaid, because they're getting that federal dollars, they can require their healthcare workers to get vaccinations. And what I didn't understand was, in California, and you correct me if I'm wrong, because I heard this on the news, in California, if you're a healthcare worker and you test positive for COVID, you still have to go to work.
Yep, it was the California Department of Public Health at the governor's office this past Saturday put out a mandate. Basically, the mandate says if you are a healthcare worker and you test positive for COVID, you're showing up for work. Now, you're showing up for work in hospitals or in places where people are coming in sick, whether they've got the cold, the flu, or something else. And if you test positive, there is no quarantine time for you.
Right.
You're showing up for work.
I think the name of the show is Common Sense. I mean, does that make any sense whatsoever to anybody? I mean, if anybody should make sure that when they're with someone, they should be in the best of health, because the people they're dealing with are not in the best of health. I mean, so God forbid someone goes to the hospital because they hurt their back or they fell and broke a leg or something. And so they're lying there and, Mary comes in to give them the sponge bath and she's got COVID. I mean, does any of that make any sense that, if you're the federal The United States Supreme Court ruled today that they can mandate the vaccine requirement, but the state of California says if you're a healthcare worker and you have COVID, you got to go to work. I mean, that's what makes people shake their head about all of this and say no one's in control. That's really what it comes down to. It's what makes people. You don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be a lawyer. You don't have to play one on TV. You don't have to stay at a Holiday Inn. If you got COVID, you stay home. But no, if you're a healthcare worker in California and you got COVID, you got to go to work where sick people are.
Well, and
It's no wonder people leave this state. They're trying to survive.
Well, and what makes it even worse is that, we found out from the CDC this past week, and something, we've talked about too, is, those that get COVID and show some of the more severe symptoms, they tend to be individuals who have other complications, whether it's high blood pressure, diabetes, heart problems, or other items or other things. And so, if you're having that kind of severity with COVID or a cold or so forth, you probably have other underlying issues, a compromised immune system. Mm-hmm. And so now that you're going to the hospital, you're now being surrounded by individuals who potentially have COVID.
Right.
And it just,
the one place you should be where you don't, and this is the other thing, and, I'm sadly, I've been through this lately with family. There are some hospitals, when you go into the hospital, when someone goes into the hospital, you can't go visit them. Mm-hmm. The hospital here in California, the hospital does not allow you to go visit them because they don't want to spread COVID. But the healthcare worker that's in your hospital giving you the sponge bath can have COVID.
How many sponge baths are you getting?
I don't know. It's my New Year's resolution. I say that because if I say draw blood, then I'll turn white and pass out. But that just makes it. How do you explain to someone, gee, your grandmother or your mother is in the hospital or your husband is in the hospital, but you can't go see him because we're trying to restrict exposure to COVID. But the people that are going into the room to take their blood pressure, draw the blood, or what have you, can have COVID, according to the Department of Health in California.
Well, it's a contradiction, obviously, in messaging. It's a contradiction coming in from the governor, California Department of Public Health, which once again adds to the frustration here in California and in a lot of other places where you say one thing, you do another. I mean, one of the other contradictions that we've talked about is the governor's asking everyone to go get a mandate, go get their booster shot, go get their vaccines. Right. But yet, he's been in a lawsuit to prevent the prison guards from getting their vaccine. Mm-hmm. Mind you, as we talked about earlier, the prison guards have donated quite a bit of money against the recall campaign, but it's once again, it is a failure in communications where you have all these contradictions on the same subject. It's not that, I stand on one side here on one subject right. and then stand something. This is the same subject. This is the same area.
Right.
And so,
and the public is not stupid. They're confused. But they're not stupid. And so they look at it and say, well, wait a minute. How can you do that? How can you tell me? That's him calling me now, telling me to go get another. I got to go get my 5th vaccine shot. How can you tell people to go get a vaccine, to go get your booster shot, when the state is on the side of the guards suing for them not to get a booster shot?
No, not even to get vaccines.
Not to get a vaccine.
Not to get a vaccine, yeah.
And what also doesn't make sense is, I don't know how you argue that in court. I mean, if you're the lawyer representing them, and you've got the governor who's everywhere, from Disneyland to San Francisco, telling people to go get the vaccine, but not for this special group, it really makes no sense, and it really leaves people wondering, the question of, this is serious shit. Who's in charge? Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Is it the governor? Is it the union? Is it the money? Is it the president? The vice president? I mean, she's getting it. That was her new line today, by the way. We're getting it done. We're getting it done. She repeated it twice. Like, it was. They asked her about, you promised 500,000 COVID at-home tests for Americans in December. You haven't delivered on that. And today you promised another 500,000. And her response is, we're getting it done. We're getting it done. So,
Well, it hasn't gotten done, and I think you are right. I think in this particular issue, I think the big question is who is in charge. And right now, it doesn't seem like anyone's in charge, and that
the
that is
virus
that
is
is
in charge.
yeah, the virus is in charge. You're right. I mean, it's sad, but nonetheless, it's what we're dealing with right now, and we'll keep as we get more information on this, we'll keep reporting it out.
And it's almost like it's we used to have a saying, I can't say it, but we used to say it's so messed up you can't make this shit up. That's what we used to say. You can't
Yeah.
make this shit up. So you sit here and talk about it, and it's like, you don't have to exaggerate or anything. You can't make this shit up. I mean, what's going on? So